Hi everyone, welcome back to English Lab. I'm Leo, your host. Today, we're wrapping up our B2 podcast series with a topic that connects everything we've discussed: storytelling. Why stories? Because storytelling is how humans make sense of the world. It's how we learn, how we connect, how we inspire each other, and how we understand ourselves. Think about it. Every culture has stories. Every family has stories. And your life is a story that you're writing every single day through your choices and experiences. To explore this with me, I have Anastasiia. And today we're going to talk about why stories are so powerful, how they shape our identity and our beliefs, and how you can use storytelling to improve your English and also to understand your own life better. This is the fourth episode of our B2 podcast series. We've gone deep. We've talked about minimalism, success and failure, and identity. Now we're bringing it all together through the power of stories. And remember, there's a free study guide PDF in the description with vocabulary, phrases, discussion questions, and a real-world storytelling challenge. Let's dive in.
Leo, why do you think humans are so obsessed with stories? I mean, we read books, we watch movies, we listen to podcasts. We're consuming stories constantly.
Because stories are how our brains are wired to process information. If I tell you a random statistic, you'll probably forget it in an hour. But if I tell you a story with a beginning, middle, and end, with characters and emotion, that sticks. That becomes part of how you understand the world.
So stories are more memorable than facts?
Exactly. Facts are abstract. Stories are concrete. A story shows you something happening. It puts you inside an experience. And that's how humans learn, through narrative, not through isolated information.
Can you think of a specific example?
Sure. I could tell you. Exercise is beneficial for your mental health. Studies show regular physical activity reduces anxiety and depression. You'd understand that intellectually. Or I could tell you. I was in a dark place, struggling with anxiety. I started running 3 times a week, and within a month, my entire perspective shifted. I felt lighter, more energized, more hopeful. Which one resonates more?
The second one, absolutely.
Right. The second one puts you inside the experience. You can imagine it. You can feel it. And that's why stories are so powerful in communication, in education, in therapy, in sales, in everything.
You mentioned therapy. How does storytelling work in therapy?
A therapist helps you examine and often rewrite the stories you tell yourself. Like we talked about in the last episode with identity. Many people are stuck in limiting stories. I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed. Nobody really likes me. And therapy often involves rewriting those narratives. Changing the story changes your life.
So stories literally shape our reality?
To an extent, yes. If you believe the story, I'm not good at languages, that story becomes self-fulfilling. You don't try as hard. You avoid challenging situations. You interpret setbacks as proof of the story. But if you change the story to, I can develop language skills through consistent effort, that different story leads to different behaviors and different outcomes.
That's really powerful. Now, how does storytelling work for language learners specifically?
Storytelling is like the bridge between language and real life. When you tell a story, you're not just using isolated words or grammar exercises. You're connecting language to meaning, to emotion, to context. You're using past tense, cause and effect, description, dialogue, all naturally embedded in the story.
So it's more motivating than grammar drills?
Infinitely more motivating. Grammar drills feel like punishment. Stories feel like communication. And when you tell a story in English, you're not thinking, am I using the present perfect correctly? You're thinking, how do I convey this experience to my listener?
That's a different kind of focus.
Completely different. And that's actually when real learning happens. When you're focused on meaning and communication rather than on the mechanics of the language.
Can you give me an example of a story someone might tell in English as practice?
Absolutely. Someone could tell the story of how I overcame my fear of speaking English, or a moment when I failed at something and what I learned, or a person who changed my perspective. The topic doesn't matter. What matters is that they're using language to communicate a real experience or insight.
And what does that teach them that a textbook can't?
It teaches them how to structure their thoughts in a way that's coherent and engaging. It teaches them vocabulary and context. It teaches them how to navigate the language when they don't know exact words. They have to describe, explain, find alternatives. It teaches them that communication is about understanding and connection, not perfection.
So, imperfection is okay in storytelling?
Imperfection is not just okay, it's essential. Some of the best stories have grammatical errors or slightly awkward phrasing, but they have emotion and authenticity, and that's what makes them powerful.
Let me ask about something different. Do you think every person is a natural storyteller?
I think every person is a storyteller, whether they realize it or not. Some people are more skilled at it than others, sure, but everyone tells stories. When you explain why you were late, that's a story. When you describe your weekend, that's a story. When you justify a decision to someone, that's a story with causation.
So everyone has the capacity to tell stories better?
Absolutely. Some people need to develop more awareness of what makes a story compelling. Some need to practice more. But nobody is inherently bad at storytelling. They just haven't learned the techniques or haven't practiced enough. Let's pause here. We're talking about how stories shape our brains, our beliefs, our communication, and our learning. And we're talking about your power to tell better stories and to use stories as a tool for growth and connection. If you want to develop your storytelling skills and your English at the same time, there's a free study guide PDF in the description. This guide includes vocabulary related to storytelling, narrative structure, and emotional expression. It has comprehension questions, discussion prompts, and a real-world storytelling challenge where you'll write and tell your own story in English. Download it now and engage with this material. Storytelling is not just an English skill. It's a life skill that will make you a better communicator, a better thinker, and a better version of yourself. Subscribe to English Lab for more conversations that teach you language and life at the same time. Now let's continue with Anastasiia and explore how stories shape our identity and beliefs, how to recognize limiting stories in your own life, and how to tell better stories that serve you.
So we've established that stories are powerful, but what about negative stories? How do limiting stories keep people stuck?
Limiting stories are like invisible prisons. Someone tells themselves, "I'm not creative," or "I'm too old to change careers," or "People like me don't succeed." And that story becomes their filter for interpreting everything that happens.
What do you mean, a filter?
A filter for how they interpret reality. If someone believes, "I'm not good at public speaking," and they give a presentation that goes okay, they'll interpret that as, "I barely got through it." But someone without that limiting story will interpret the same performance as, "That went pretty well." Same event, different interpretation, because of the stories they're telling themselves.
So the story literally changes how they perceive reality.
Exactly. And that changed perception leads to changed behavior. The person with the limiting story will avoid public speaking because they believe they're bad at it. So they get less practice. So they actually do become worse at it. The story becomes self-fulfilling.
How do you break that cycle?
First, you have to become aware of the story. Most people don't even realize they're telling themselves a story. They think it's just truth. So the first step is, wait, is this actually true? Or is this just a story I'm telling?
How do you examine that?
You can ask, where does this story come from? Who taught me this story? What evidence do I have for this story? What evidence contradicts it? And often, when you actually examine it, the story falls apart.
And then?
Then you can choose a different story. That's the power. You can say, I used to believe I wasn't good at public speaking, but I'm going to practice and develop this skill. That's a new story. And that new story opens up new possibilities.
It sounds simple, but it's probably not easy to do.
It's not easy because the limiting story often has a lot of evidence supporting it. It's been reinforced for years. But it is possible. And the more times you choose a new story and act in alignment with it, the more that new story becomes real.
Let's talk about cultural stories. How do stories shape culture?
Every culture has foundational stories, myths, legends, historical narratives. And these stories shape what's considered possible and valuable in that culture. Different cultures have different hero stories, which shapes what kind of person they valorize.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Some cultures have hero stories about warriors and conquest. Other cultures have hero stories about wisdom or compassion or community. And these stories shape what qualities children grow up aspiring to develop. Stories literally shape societies.
So they're incredibly powerful.
Incredibly powerful. Which is why what stories we tell about ourselves, about each other, about what's possible, matters so much.
For our listeners, if they want to improve their English through storytelling, what's a practical first step?
I'd say, tell a story from your own life. Not a fictional story, a real one. Choose something meaningful. A challenge you overcame. A person who influenced you. A moment that changed your perspective. And try to tell it in English, even if it's not perfect.
And then what?
Record it or write it down. Listen to it or read it back. Notice where you struggled with language. Notice what was effective. Then, tell the same story again, and you'll find it flows more naturally the second time.
That's a great exercise.
It is. And what's beautiful about this is that you're not just improving your English. You're also processing your own experiences, extracting meaning from them, and becoming a better storyteller of your own life.
That's profound. So storytelling is actually a form of self-understanding.
Absolutely. When you articulate your story, you understand yourself better. You see cause and effect in your own life. You recognize patterns. You gain clarity. And that clarity can actually guide you forward.
One more question. Do you think stories can heal people?
I absolutely do. Trauma often fragments the narrative of your life. It breaks the story into before and after. And healing often involves reintegrating the story, finding meaning in the traumatic experience, and seeing how it's part of a larger narrative that includes growth and resilience.
So therapists use narrative work a lot?
They do. Narrative therapy is actually a specific approach. The idea is that you are not the problem. The problem is the problem. And you can externalize the problem, stand outside the story you've been telling, and write a new one.
That's empowering.
It is. And that's what I want people to take away from this episode. You are the author of your story. You can rewrite it. You can choose which stories to tell about yourself and which ones to let go of. And that choice can literally change your life.
That's a beautiful place to end.
It is. And that's the end of our 4th B2 podcast episode. We talked about the power of storytelling, why stories are essential to how humans learn and communicate, how stories shape our beliefs and identity, and how you can use storytelling to improve your English and understand your own life. Here's what I want you to take away. Every single day, you're living a story and telling stories. The question is, are you aware of the stories you're telling? Are they serving you? Or do they need to be rewritten? Storytelling is not just for writers and filmmakers. It's for everyone. And improving your storytelling skills means improving your ability to communicate, to connect with others, to understand yourself, and to create the life you want. If you want to develop your storytelling ability and your English simultaneously, there's a free study guide PDF in the description. Download it and work through the exercises. The guide includes vocabulary about narrative, emotion, and communication. It has comprehension questions, discussion prompts, and a real-world challenge. Tell your own story in English and share it if you feel comfortable. This concludes our 4-episode B2 podcast series. We've talked about minimalism and consumerism, success and failure, personal identity, and the power of storytelling. We've explored ideas about values, resilience, authenticity, and growth. And most importantly, We've done it all in English, which means you've been practicing language while engaging with real, meaningful content. Subscribe to English Lab for more conversations like these. Give this video a thumbs up and comment below. What story would you like to tell? What story has shaped your life? Or what limiting story are you ready to rewrite? We'd love to hear from you. Share this podcast series with someone who's learning English and who wants to go beyond grammar exercises to actually improve through meaningful conversation. Thanks for being part of this journey through the B2 podcast series. You've done great work. Keep practicing, keep reflecting, keep telling your stories. Take care, and I'll see you in the next English Lab podcast.